You're watching or listening to Strangers in Space, and in this edition, we're going to be talking about space babies and the Devil's Chord, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
Hi, I'm John.
Hey, I'm Lee.
And I'm Matt.
So actually, because this is the first time it's happened like this, before I ask anybody what they thought of anything, let's find out when we watched them. So, Lee, did you stay up? Did you watch them both at midnight?
Yeah, I watched them both at midnight. Yes.
Or one at midnight and one at what, like 12:45, right?
That's right.
But you managed to stay up for the whole thing, despite the fact that we're all old, right?
Yeah, I stayed up. Not only that, I couldn't then get back to sleep, so I had to drive out to Dartmoor and watch the rest of the Aurora Borealis.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I only found out about that this morning. A bit late for me.
Well, yeah, a little bit. You can fly up to the Arctic Circle. Well, I missed the main purple streaks in the sky. All of them around my area look absolutely incredible, the pictures. But I caught the tail end where it's just getting white. It's just like white streaks. But it's almost like, if you believe in God or aliens, somebody turning on a torch and just shining it down, and it just happens, and then it disappears and happens. It's quite extraordinary. But it wasn't as good as other people's pictures.
It's supposed to be a repeat tonight.
Oh,
a repeat?
Is it?
Yeah. Oh, that's handy. Is that on BBC iPlayer?
We might go up to the White Horse at Uppington.
6:20 on BBC One. That's when.
I don't believe in God or magic, but what I do believe in is, just particles descending through the atmosphere or whatever.
It's great.
I watched the first one at about 12:10 because I was watching something else and it went past 12 o'clock. And no, I wasn't stopping the other thing so I could watch Doctor Who the instant it started. I finished watching the thing I was watching, went off and got myself a drink, and then I settled down with Doctor Who at about 12:10 and pretty much started dozing off as the first episode was coming to a close. So then I went to sleep and I got up at 6 o'clock this morning and watched the second one. John, how was the Aurora Borealis for you?
It was non-existent radio because there was too much light pollution, tragically. So, life was terrible. But, family call. We stayed up at midnight and watched both episodes, one after the other, like the tragics we are.
Have you seen them? Have you watched them again since? I think I've only watched them once. Lee's not watched them more than once, have you?
You think you've only watched them once?
No, I was going to say I think Lee's only watched them once, and then I decided to
to
throw myself in the middle because I knew the answer to my bit.
Yeah, that really would be an old person thing to forget how many times you've watched the episodes that were released today.
No, amazingly, I'm young enough to add sort of extra bits in the middle of sentences, even as I'm speaking, but then not young enough to actually make any sense when I do it. John stayed up. He's watched them just once. Matt, did you stay up, and have you watched them more than once?
I didn't stay up, but I decided I'd watch them happily over breakfast. So I watched them over breakfast. And I watched one over breakfast. Then I went and cleaned my teeth. I used a new water pick, which isn't your wife, Lee. It's like dental floss, but it fires bursts of water between your teeth.
Yeah, really, you get that out of the tap, don't you?
Yeah, but this is high pressure, so you sort of follow the gum line.
You're pressure hosing your teeth, like
It works really well. And then I went to the loo.
And if Matt stops speaking halfway through this podcast, it'll be because his tongue fell out.
And then after that, I had a coffee and a protein bar and watched the second one, The Devil's Chord.
You can sell any old crap to the middle classes, can't you?
Oh, water. Honestly, electric toothbrushes and water picks are the way forward now.
Does it get rid of mildew between your teeth?
You'd be amazed. You use it and you'll be amazed at what falls out of your mouth when you've been using it.
Shoe.
Your teeth.
Well, it's large chunks of things.
Lee seems to be intimately acquainted with the contents of Matt's mouth. I don't know how he knows there's mildew in there, and I don't want to know how he knows there's mildew in there.
And
so let's let's do this then. In a nutshell. And let's do, in a nutshell, the two of them, and then let's go off and talk about each of the individual episodes individually afterwards. But in a nutshell, John, did you like what you saw?
I like the second episode, I wasn't as hot on the first one, but I don't think the first one's for us in a lot of ways.
I think that I don't know quite who it is for, but we'll dig into that.
Absolutely, it's a lot of beats. It's I think if I'm going to nutshell it, it's the end of the world to Church on Ruby Road's Rose, I would say.
Absolutely, which makes it very confusing how the episodes have gone out slightly, but I guess we'll get into that. Matt, how did you find them?
Much like John, I mean, I think the first one irritated me to start with, and I was very, very down. But actually, I kind of softened to it over time, and then I reminded myself that I've disliked almost all of RTD's opening episodes. They've all felt that they're not quite for me, and so this followed in the grand tradition. The second one, I really liked. I was really surprised by.
Oh wow! See, I have liked most of RTD's opening episodes because I expect them to be something light and frothy, and I think they've all overperformed in that regard. Space Babies, I thought, was probably the worst episode of Doctor Who that's ever been made, but we'll get back to that. And The Devil's Chord, I didn't think was a great deal better. Lee, what did you think?
Okay.
Just in a nutshell, Lee.
2 o'clock in the morning. I didn't watch the end of the second one because I was in pain with cringing too much. I didn't enjoy either of them as entertainment, but I loved individual performances and certain bits.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay, Space Babies then, because we have to do it, right?
We are Doctor Who fans. I think we better.
Yeah, about 10 minutes in, I had to press exit on the iPlayer and go back in just to be absolutely certain that I hadn't chosen the end of the world by accident, because it was every beat, and even the dialogue felt exactly the same. And then through the episode as well, he kept repeating things that the other showrunners had done in the meantime. And he wasn't changing those up either. It wasn't like he was commenting on them. It was just like he was saying, oh, I'll have that. Oh, I'll do that. Oh, I'll have that. But I think my main issue with it was it didn't tell a story. It just arrived in a place. They sort of stood around in the place. They met some babies in the place. They hung around in a room with the babies for a bit. Another character finally turned up and then spent the next rest of the episode telling them what was going on in the place, such that as a viewer, about 2 minutes after this uninterrupted stream of exposition started, you kind of figured how the episode had to end. And then they just kind of sat around in the place, not understanding how the episode had to end, until eventually at the end of the episode, they figured out finally how the episode had to end. And then we got the end credits. And just 45 minutes and almost entirely nothing happened, which I guess we're kind of used to with Russell T Davies. But I think what got me this time, and so this is where I'm coming from, is usually he disguises it better. So it's not just exposition, but there's a lot of running around and a lot of incident. Here, there was no running around, hardly at all. No incident, hardly at all. There was just people expositing at each other, or expositing out of thin air. The Doctor did that thing that I hated when Peter Capaldi did it in Smile, when he was just walking around, sort of understanding things that he had no experience of, and thus no cause to understand. And I loved what the episode was trying to say, but I just thought the delivery of that message was absolutely awful. So that's kind of my longer form version of Space Babies. I don't know, Matt, get stuck into Space Babies.
I mean, I didn't like it, but I think it had a mystery to it. It had a lot of running around solving the mystery. I think everything had a point in it. I thought, the concept of the bogeyman being created out of the same matter, and there's a sort of a mistaken.
That's kind of Sleep No More, though, isn't it?
Yeah. So, well, yeah. I'm not saying it's. I think my main problem with it is the problem that I've got in general with this new approach to Doctor Who, that everybody's talking about how bold it is and how wacky it is and how outrageous it is, and actually that first episode I didn't think was particularly bold or wacky or outrageous. It just felt like an RTD episode done reasonably well. I didn't think the babies were particularly well done or convincing. I don't think wasn't a very good idea. I still don't particularly agree with the Doctor trying to save the snot monster, because I think it's such an obvious snot monster that I was just thinking, well, just let the snot monster die. It's not,
it's just snot.
It's a bit. There's that sort of tension in Doctor Who. I think it's been there before. I don't know if it was in Arachnids or something, that you suddenly get the Doctor being very worried about killing an obvious monster. Sometimes monsters are there to be killed, and sometimes monsters are there for the Doctor to have conniptions over. And I think in this instance, it was an eminently killable monster, and they could have just moved on.
But go on, Lee.
I was just going to say, I think the saving of it's fine, because he had a reason to save it. He had a few flashes back, and it's like, no, actually, I want to save this thing. But I think what the problem was is that they didn't know what to do with it once they saved it, so it's just chucked back in the corridor.
But also, I think him talking about saving it is another issue with the episode, which is Russell T Davies was trying to shoehorn everything about Doctor Who into this episode. So every moment was, this is another thing about Doctor Who that new viewers have to understand. And I think when he did it originally, he did it slightly more organically and slowly and confidently, and it became a series of mysteries about this person that became solved. With this one, I don't think he wanted to waste time building up this mystery. I think he just wanted to tell us as quickly as possible, which is why actually I'm still more optimistic about future episodes after the second one, because I think once he's got this out of his system, then hopefully there could be a few more mysteries.
It's Doctor as this lonely figure, isn't it? It's just trying to show you who it is. It was the fact that you could tell from so early on the Doctor was going to be saving the snot monster. It's like, oh, I was terrified of it. And then, oh no, I'm unique in the universe. Oh, come on. Where are you going? So it was predictable, was the thing for me. It's I know where I'm going. So there was no tension to it at all the way through.
Yeah. Do we think it worked for new viewers then? And how...
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, it's season 1. Is that correct? So we've had a series 1 and we've had a season 1 already. So we're all back to ones again, which is quite irritating anyway. But it's only a conversation irritation. But season 1 it's plainly aimed at a brand new audience that's never come across Doctor Who, just like the 1997 with the exposition of I've got 2 hearts, blah, blah, all at the beginning. Just get it out of the way and let's move on, sort of thing. So I was expecting that to happen. I didn't mind how it was done, because Shooty's such a great actor at throwing his lines. I like how he delivers everything, and it's fine. And you're given that script, and you're like, what do I do this and how do I make this interesting? I've got to throw all these lines out. So the banter wasn't particularly incredible between them, but they had to get it out. But I'm just hoping that kind of stops now, and like Matt says, we move on.
Yeah, we'll come back to the actors and the banter and all that. But on that point of how did this work for new viewers, you've got to expect that in America, at least, there's going to be a good-sized part of the audience who didn't go back and watch Church on Ruby Road first, because they'd been told Doctor Who's starting now with these 2 episodes that come at 7 p.m. or whatever it was, wherever you were in America. There must have been a fair number of people, surely, who sat down and started it with Space Babies.
From what I understand, though, the Church on Ruby Road was flagged up as episode 1.
It's been moved into that thing. Is it episode 1 or is it episode 0?
It's episode 1, then 2 and 3, apparently. Obviously, I haven't got Disney Plus internationally, so I can tell myself that that's from what friends were saying abroad.
Oh, that makes more sense. Even so, you must still think people might have thought that first one was skippable and something they'd go back to later, since it's a Christmas episode. But then they were all Christmas episodes, weren't they?
Yeah, there's a lot of Christmas going on. And you've also got that thing where if it's brand new and you've heard about it and you're like, oh, no, I'll start here. Is it quite confusing to have all these things thrown at you? I thought it would have been confusing in 97 to do it that way. I'm almost thinking, you probably didn't need to do this. You could have let this out slowly over the episode. You know, retain a bit of mystery. It doesn't matter to us as fans. We know all this, but he can say this to her slowly. He doesn't have to bang on about it pretty quickly.
It feels to me, though, like they've made a real mess of the way they've started it up. Because, I mean, the idea surely must have felt like the idea was that you could start with Space Babies and just go on from there. This brand new era of Doctor Who, if you were coming at it in America on Disney Plus and you'd never seen Doctor Who before anywhere else, except if you start with Space, even if you start with the church on Ruby Road, there's a lot of talk in the Devil's Chord about stuff that you needed to have seen the Tennant specials to understand. And I don't think he really did it didn't feel to me, at least, like he did a very good job of explaining the hows, whys and wherefores. The hows, whys and wherefores of why you should care about these things, other than just throwing out, oh, I'm the son of the toy maker.
It feels like there is a lot of complication about which bit is the launchpad, as you were saying. Because now we've got, in the new RTD era, we've got the David Tennant specials, we've got the Christmas special, and we've got the series, and they're all sort of framed as launch pads that work in slightly different ways. And it probably presumably ties in with RTD going when he can go to LA, when the Americans want a launch pad, how they want the launch pad. And also it gives you different options, but I think with those different options, it creates confusion that then feeds into the script, and RTD I don't think has very successfully managed to synthesize all of those different requirements into this one script. But I thought the second episode was a lot better. So I think if he sacrificed one episode as a throwaway that works for whatever Disney wants it to work for, or Bad Wolf wants it to work for, then, you know, for me the second one is a launch for myself rather than anybody else.
Although I did wonder.
I'm still not quite sure about that.
Given how quickly, how much it ties into Church on Ruby Road, I kind of wonder if it was originally intended to be shown in fairly quick succession to that, because you pick up straight from the end of Ruby Road and you go back to the situation, the domestic.
I love the snowing indoors. I thought that was
beautiful.
That was like Tarkovsky. No.
There were lots of nice ideas and lots of good moments, but it seemed to me like, so in RTD1 it felt like if he had a good idea or some good moments, he was quite good at stringing those things together to make them make sense and to make them sort of feel organic and feel like a story,
and hidden a bit as well.
I didn't really feel in either of these two episodes like he told a story. Much more so in The Devil's Chord he did, but I don't think in either of them he quite properly did, and certainly not in Space Babies.
It's all about spectacle, isn't it, these two, really? I think in a lot of ways.
Well, in some ways, but then in other ways it was all about just people standing around in rooms talking to each other.
Yeah, it was that, wasn't it? And there was no kind of movement. There was movement with the camera, but actually he's like Matt Smith. He's quite balletic. I love his movements. He's like a gazelle, isn't he? But that
the ironic thing being that Lee's frozen on our screens. So there's no movement coming from him at all.
Not on mine. No, really? He's moving for me.
Oh, it's just me then.
Yeah.
And I'll be the one recording the video, right? So okay.
I just like the way he moves, and but I'm not entirely convinced yet that the cinematography or the director of photography is keeping up with him in that particular way. There's some great edits and a few good shots, but I think they need to play with the camera a lot more with him. They did it with, well, we're skipping to the next episode. They did it with the Maestro a bit more, but
let's talk.
It was quite static, I thought.
Let's talk about the second episode, and then we'll talk about the actors and stuff like that. Because I guess that if we're doing two episodes together to talk about the actors, you really need to do it across the pair. Before we do, I guess Susan Twist was in both episodes. Lee, you better put.
Are we absolutely sure that's an actual name of an actor, or have they just seeded IMDb with this?
No, she's been in a ton of stuff. She's quite well known.
Yeah, is she?
Or was she just cast because of her name?
Well, yeah. Or is this a sort of Mandela effect of if you put her up on IMDb? Obviously she's an actress, but I'm just wondering if there's a big sort of bluff going on, because the name Susan Twist is just so ridiculous for an actress who keeps popping up in these things.
Who in a twist at the end of the series might turn out to be Susan, right?
Susan.
That's not a spoiler lead. That's just talking about what we've got in front of us, right?
Also, it holds potentially more weight after the Devil's Chord and his slightly odd reaction to having Susan potentially being dead.
I'm gonna have to join Equity with the name I Am Valeyard and see how that works.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I kind of gathered that my thought process was this could be Susan being the mother. It would be fantastic. I would love this to happen, and I think this would really make it a very interesting series if they did go ahead and do that. And then he's looking after his great granddaughter. That suddenly ups the stakes. It makes him not have his freedom, and then he has responsibility, which is what we're all banging on. He's banging on about freedom, irresponsible. I can do what I like, but actually, then it's like, oh, hang on a minute, I've got to look after this one because that's my blood. That'd be brilliant. But whether or not
a lot of the 2 episodes was so heavy-handed, so in your face, and of course it's RTD, so of course it was, that you do wonder if even those aspects, the bit where it says, oh yes, I've got my freedom, I'm really free, me, I tell you what's really great about not having any people, which is really sad, but I'm also really free, loads of freedom, fantastic freedom. It's like, if everything else in the episode is as heavy-handed as it is, then surely that's got to be leaded somewhere as well, right?
Oh God, yeah. I was watching this with a group chat with Dylan. Dylan was talking about the expositionary dialogue. Oh, raging.
Even the dialogue that doesn't look like exposition is probably going to turn out to have been exposition, right?
Dylan's not a fan of these.
No, if you love Chibnall, you'll love this.
I just thought that everything about it was sort of tonally weird. So I was actually really looking forward to the Ncuti Gatwa episodes, expecting a kind. Do you remember? And I've said this a bunch, so I don't suppose you have to remember right back when. But I really liked the Keith Boak episodes in the first series with Christopher Eccleston because I found them more like a cartoon strip, or more like the sort of graphic novel thing that like Andrew Cartmel was doing, right? I found them more like that. And then when Joe Ahern came in and the episodes became much more normal, I found those much more dull by comparison in the execution. So this is not about the writing, it's about the execution. And I was kind of expecting with these, the sort of Ncuti Gatwa episodes, a kind of return to that sort of graphic novel-esque, kind of slightly heightened thing, so that it would land somewhere between, I don't know, on the one hand, Judge Dredd, and on the other hand, the Coen brothers, but kind of with this sort of Disney Marvel-esque thing going on as well.
That's what I did. I instantly thought that with both of these episodes, especially the second one, this could have been it could have been a strip in Doctor Who magazine.
But JR says he's not seeing that here.
Yeah, no. But what I'm seeing is, but what I think I'm seeing is, or what it feels like I'm seeing is that's what they're reaching for, and somehow they're not getting it.
Yes,
is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it feels like that's what the intention is, but it feels like not everybody knows. Whatever happened in the tone meeting, it feels like everybody's gone away from the tone meeting with a different idea in mind, and they've all gone off and done different things.
I think for me, I think the Chibnall years had quite a sort of solid tone to them. There wasn't a lot of variety. For me, it was a lot of sort of realism. Throughout the things. So this feels more chaotic. But I think that's just in contrast with what I'm being used to for the last 4 years. This feels like they've accepted that The Giggle was probably the most successful of the 3 David Tennant specials. And certainly with Devil's Chord, they're taking that as a model for, because the Devil's Chord is basically The Giggle too, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And I like that. I mean, I liked that kind of chaotic, anarchic tone feeling to The Giggle.
I've got to say, my response to The Giggle was that there was, I liked the idea. Again, it comes down to the execution, I think. I think Jinx Monsoon, I think it's probably the right casting, but I don't think the director gave the right notes, or maybe didn't even give any real notes. Maybe the director just said, let fly, because it felt like the character was a character without shade. I think in the performance, I think there was shade in the writing, but not in the performance. And I don't think that comes back to the actor. I think that comes back to the director. I think it's down to the director to say, right, let's bring the tone down on this bit. Let's take it up on this bit. Let's lean in this direction for this bit, and so on and so forth. But none of those things seem to be happening. And so right from the very start, when the character turns up, so Monsoon was doing this thing in that opening scene where she's around the piano, where she's sort of leaning around like this. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah.
And I was just, after about 3 seconds, I was thinking, stop doing that, because outside of the fiction, what it felt to me like was that the actor was doing that in the absence of having any other definitive idea of what the performance was. And so they were just moving because they couldn't, it felt like they couldn't feel what the character was supposed to be doing. So they were giving something external for the character to do that was sort of coming from outside of the page rather than what was on the page.
Jinx is a hammer blow. I mean, you know, when you have that character on screen, it's big. It's big, 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 big. And the rest of the episode couldn't really, it wasn't directed, like you say, it needed to keep up with them, or they needed to be brought back by the director a little bit. What is brilliant is that they are a perfect Disney villain. You know, it's Hocus Pocus meets, you know, Little Mermaid and all this sort of stuff. That's what that character is, and that's where the Disney effect kind of comes in. Whether or not that's intentional, whether or not Jinx is like that anyway, I don't know, the actor. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it just did not work for me in the episode at all. It felt everything around it couldn't keep up with their kind of like hyperbole of character. It's so big, the character's so big. The rest of it felt like it's trying to keep up.
That for me was one of the reasons I liked the episode, because the whole point was they were trying to keep up. They were out of their depth because there was suddenly this kind of toy maker like deity in the middle. It wasn't Harrison Chase, who's a similarly sort of big performance.
As a film, it would have been good.
It's the overwhelming power is conveyed by the presence of the actor.
Yeah. I didn't feel any power, though. That's, I think, the problem.
I don't think there was enough consequence of the Maestro's actions shown, really. That was where it kind of fell down a little for me. It felt like it was all happening in a little bubble. I know there's the sequence where, you know, RTD kills off June Hudson, but
it wanted to be Brazil, didn't it? It needed to be Brazil, and it wasn't. It was Brazil
it didn't
minus
go quite
50.
Far enough on that direction.
Yeah,
it needed to do what they did with the Celestial Toy Maker in the Giggle, which is there were a few deaths in the Giggle which were really horrible and creepy, like the guy turning into balloons and various things like that. It needed a couple of those just to solidify the power, Maestro's power.
I'm thinking, did we actually see any deaths? I can't remember if we did. We must have.
But
the first
June Hudson.
June Hudson. Sure.
Yeah. And the first guy that plays the chord, he gets the music sucked out of his heart.
Roger Lim's son.
Yes, Jeremy Lim.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was an issue again with me. You know what I'm like about on screen credits being part of the action. I mean, that was the shittiest. That was the worst CGI I've seen for a long time.
Likely.
Oh, really?
I tell it honestly, it was so pants, and I just thought, oh, what is this trash?
Which bit of CGI? The music.
The actual notes in visual form coming out of someone's heart was rubbish, beyond belief. And even
I thought, I know, on that point, I thought it was
a
good idea, but I didn't think it was massively well executed. So when they were outside the body, I thought they were great, but then coming out of the body, there was just this complete disjuncture between the body and the notes, which made it look like.
I thought Jinx sold that with the way, you know, twirling them round.
I didn't have a problem with that at all. I just think
once they were out, they were fine. I'm saying the actual special effect of them coming out of the body, they should have found a different way to do it, because it was just like there's somebody standing there and there's some notes, and there was just nothing to connect the notes with the body at all.
The carrion, the witches who feed on words, we didn't have visual words flying out of anybody's mouth. We didn't need it, because that's what was, words are words, we can hear them and you can see the effect. I think it could have, you didn't need that. What I did like was the fact that she had them around her like Dr. Octopus at the end. That's different. I mean, if she created that for a bit of fun, you kind of go, oh yeah, I can accept that as a character. But the fact that she's just pulling it out of someone's chest, it's like, well, unless you explain that that's part of her fun way of killing people, she likes to have it visually looked at. We have to accept that this strange being is actually doing that with somebody. And it's actually, that's not where music lives, in the heart. That's just a big bloody piece of muscle. Music lives up here. But anyway,
it's just out of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, anyway, isn't it?
It's all metaphor. It's music being music doesn't come. It bypasses the brain straight to the retina.
This is why I actually liked Devils, because from the initial concepts, it sounded very much like it was going to be RTD doing Richard Curtis's Yesterday, and I was sort of dreading that because I hated the way the Beatles were treated in that, and the music was treated in that, and I was dreading the Beatles being in this, because the Beatles aren't like Charles Dickens or Queen Victoria. The Beatles are a product of sort of a visual media, so they're instantly recognizable. So if they become main characters, there is a sort of a dislocation with that. But actually, this wasn't about the Beatles' music. The fact that he made this about all music has been drained from the world since 1935 or 1925. I thought that was
all the good music, isn't it? More than all music. Because obviously you had the. But I think Cilla Black sounded better, so that tells you how bad the music in this world is.
And I found that quite profound. I thought because it was about music and the power of music, rather than just this is about the Beatles or this is about fame or whatever. This is about music itself and the power of music and the importance.
What they should have done was, when they went forward in time to see the ruin of mankind, they should have had Ed Sheeran there actually doing well.
Well, except they did even better, because they started talking about the sound of the nuclear winter having its own tone.
That's what I mean, Ed Sheeran. Yeah, but
I tell you, okay, so not on either episode in particular, but in general, and also I think this probably includes the church on Ruby Road, and I'm hoping this doesn't, but I think maybe the thing that undermines it the most for me is that Ncuti Gatwa is playing this big bubbly version of the Doctor, this big broad version of the Doctor, and I think he can, and a couple of times you've seen a little nugget of this, bring it down and give it kind of authenticity, to make it feel like there is a person underneath all that bubbling exterior. But with Ruby Sunday, I'm not getting any suggestion that there's a person underneath that performance. It just feels like the whole thing is a performance. And weirdly, despite the fact that clearly these two actors get along and seem to like each other, I think that seems fairly clear. There's absolutely zero chemistry with them, because they're both playing something that feels like a performance. And so because they're playing something that feels like a performance, that becomes like a shell. And so neither of the actors is connecting either with the other actor or with the guest characters either. And so it feels like these two actors are singing these banters backwards and forwards from each other, but all the time it just feels like it's bouncing off rather than connecting. It doesn't feel like two people connecting. And so everything else about the episodes, so what you were saying about in The Devil's Chord, the idea of music being this powerful sort of thing in the universe that sort of binds us together as human beings, I think that's a great idea. I'm not sold on it, because I don't see Ruby Sunday and the Doctor actually feeling the absence of the music. I hear them just bantering about it.
Again, I'm hoping it's going to bed down, because I think these opening episodes are about Ruby Sunday experiencing things rather than being engaged with things, and she's learning about the Doctor and he's learning. I wasn't sold on Ncuti Gatwa yet, but I never am with new Doctors. And I think every new Doctor has started from an extreme and then softened. Capaldi started from a dour extreme. David Tennant started from a manic extreme and softened. Even Christopher Eccleston was pretty manic and, unpredictable in Rose, and I think he managed to soften. So I'm hoping that Ncuti Gatwa does actually kind of calm down as he's progressing.
I was again watching this with Dylan. He was saying Millie Gibson. He was finding her a bit theatre kid as a performance.
Yeah.
Which I could. I think that's why she might have worked better in The Devil's Court for me, because that episode does kind of benefit from that heightened performance, that kind of manner thing.
Yeah, she was definitely better in that.
What she did in Coronation Street was so different from this, and did have so much more sort of authenticity about it. This entire thing is like, ooh, all the time, and it just didn't feel.
There's a kind of there's a forced overjoyness to this. That sounds really miserable for me, but it's almost like, okay, we've got we've got rainbows in the titles, we're heading off into the world of diversity, which by the way I think is done really well, but everything else is so big and so glam, it's going to be so like Matt said, it's so RTD cross JNT 1985 or whatever, and it is big, it's really big. And I think you're right. I don't think the companion Millie hasn't got it yet. Whereas when we've got something to compare it to, which is unfortunate, really, because we're comparing it to the beginning with Rose when she met Christopher Eccleston, and actually the beginning of the Tennant series too. You've got those two things, and both times it's the actor that pulls it off, that really makes you believe these really cheesy lines.
Billy Piper
doesn't really pill it.
Billy Piper and Christopher Eccleston were playing in that episode, Rose, and in the sort of, well, in the 5 episodes that followed, because Eros Lynns basically take their lead from what's been going on in the first 3, don't they? So essentially you've got a run of 5 episodes there at the start, which is quite cartoonish, and which is quite outlandish, where the characters aren't being written to be necessarily very straightforward, very ordinary people. But Billy Piper and Christopher Eccleston convinced you of the actual genuine people underneath the performance. And that's what I'm not getting with these two at the moment. And I've seen her do it in Coronation Street, and I see glimmers of it in what he's doing. So somehow I think, and maybe again this comes down to directors or producers or whatever, not giving notes or giving the wrong notes or somehow managing to convey the wrong thing, but it just somehow those two together aren't able to get it yet in the 3 episodes yet.
It's Ruby's backstory, isn't it? Compared to Rose, it's really contrived in comparison, because she's been on telly, she's a foundling. It's all the plot in there. Rose, you need to know absolutely nothing about that. What's in that first montage? It's really established quickly. Which I don't know how to relate to it yet.
Billy Piper's playing an everybody. Somebody's lost their job, somebody's a teenager who's like, chewing gum, I don't really know what to do in my life, and it's exactly. But she's
Noel Clarke.
But she's one of those kind of like relatively uneducated, kind of like in a deprived area, but she's got a natural intelligence and curiosity, and that's why it works so absolutely brilliantly. And I'm going to say now that I'm really enjoying everything that Ncuti is doing, apart from this one look where he's looking quite scared in his Beatles outfit. But apart from that, generally speaking, I think he's got it really well where he can turn on a penny, so he can switch from being quite dark, the genocide talk, to being really happy again. And he's got that thing, going like all the doctors have, where he's really being happy, but there's something else going on that's really serious. And I think he convinces me, and I like his happiness, I like his warmth, and also he can turn and become, he's got an effeminate side, and he's got a traditional male side, being kind of quite butch and don't do that. There's a lot of don't do this and a lot of shouting, which is really good. I'd listen to him. And then the next thing, you want to give him a hug and a kiss because he's just really warm and tender. So he's got these, this beautiful kind of juxtaposition of male and female within him, which is obvious, but he's playing it perfectly for me. I just really love, and that's what the Doctor really is. He is a mixed kind of personality within a human body, and I do like that. But you're right, that it doesn't work with the companion at the moment.
He's always looking for a good reading of lines as well. The number of ways he finds to say space babies during the episode was phenomenal.
But then I think going back to sort of what I was also saying is, like, maybe part of the reason why the two of them don't seem to be selling me on the authenticity of the people undergoing the journey is also because Russell T Davies has been doing these things where he just goes through all the same beats he did the first time around, basically in the same order, often with variations on the same dialogue. And to me, that feels like he's doing a checklist rather than he's recreating things for new people. It's like this. Ruby is a new character. She's not Rose. Don't get her to just do exactly what Rose did, because then it doesn't feel natural anymore. It just feels like you're repeating something. And worse still, it feels like he's doing it because it's on his checklist of things he needs to do. And so he's blasting through these things. The thing where she gets her key, the thing where Rose got her key was almost exactly the same, but it was given pathos. It was given time. It was given weight. Here, it's almost exactly the same scene. They just burst in. He goes, "Here's your key." Blam, blam, blam. There's a little bit of banter about what's a key? Oh, it's a key. I'll have the key. Do I want the key? No, I need the key. And you're just like, no, let them be human beings. Let them be people.
That was almost like a perfect recreation of that scene, wasn't it?
Incredible. The phone scene, again, same beat, but you didn't get that photo of her phoning, or that shot of her phoning home to sell that. It was telling and showing.
It was all so fast, so superficial. Then the characters were really losing out because of it, because they weren't getting chance to actually be those moments. They were just drifting through those moments as quickly as you could to get onto the next moment that you needed to drift through. Weird. Matt, you're drifting as well, drifting off.
No. I mean, I just think all of these have the caveat. They're like 3 episodes in, and these things bed down slowly. I'm hoping. I'm not solid. I think RTD is taking a different approach this time. The whole Bad Wolf thing in that first series had, from memory, a degree of mystery to it and excitement, because we weren't expecting an arc storyline. Now we are expecting arc storylines. I don't think he's kind of seeding it as subtly as he might.
No, he's seeding it using a brick wrapped in a gold leaf, isn't he?
Yes.
With lemon all over it.
But he's also writing now for a global audience rather than whatever he was writing for with Rose.
But that whole pun the whole episode depends on Bogeyman being a pun that only works in British English.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? But also on that note, we're a third of the way through the Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson sort of era now. We've had 3 episodes, there's 6 left. We're a third of the way through. So yeah, I like Matt, I am very much on there. I hope it settles down. But if it's going to settle down, it better bloody hurry up and do it, because we are getting there. She's in about 6 episodes time. This story is going to have come to a head in one way or another. I don't want to say too much because for Lee's delicate ears, but I mean, they've got 6 episodes left of this storyline to go, and it just feels like they're still bludgeoning at the beginning of the storyline.
Oh, and on that note, I've been very spoiler free. I'm not actually too worried about it now, which is a bit sad, but hey.
Well, I tell you, who's coming up in the next series, Lee?
But no, I think I'm one of the most spoiler free people in the UK. The only thing I knew was the episode was called Space Babies, and I knew that Jinx was in one of them wearing that suit. That's it. That's all I kind of know. I don't know anything else about the series. So the music, everything about it was new to me.
We all say that you're the most ignorant person in the country.
And even if we don't say it, we think it.
You're like a yardstick for being unaware.
I'm a yardstick for the true Doctor Who kind of experience, to be honest. I'm like a space baby approaching this. I'm brand new to it. Apart from the fact I've got a whole load of backstory of thousands of years of watching Doctor Who, whereas other people will not have that. They will come to. So I'm trying to come to it fresh, like somebody else might come to it fresh.
And obviously, there's no subtlety about it. It's like Jinx Monsoon's son, whatever. They called him son, didn't they? But that's not really what it is. But he turns up and just before the end credits, so you know that there's going to be some kind of follow up with that character at some point.
Did they say son or did they say child of?
Oh, child, I suppose. I can't remember whether it was child or son. Either way, I think I've seen somebody refer to that character as son on social media somewhere afterwards when they said, "Oh, did you see Jinx Monsoon's Maestro's son?" Was but yeah, there's a Russell T Davies is not hiding things anymore, is he? It's almost felt at one point like he was throwing so much stuff in front of you. Long conversations about Susan, in which she was named, wasn't she?
Yes.
And then there's the Varney, and there's long conversations about other things. There's the sort of Maestro child is definitely coming back. The one who waits is definitely on their way.
So the one thing I do think is there's definitely a less subtlety with RTD's approach this year.
Than even before.
but also the villains, the arcing villains that he's choosing have less subtlety. So they're gods, they're deities, they're mythological entities.
Big as you can go, right?
And I think maybe his approach ties in with that. Maybe his approach is, in a kind of a meta way, is actually working.
It's a lot about the irrational, because the toy maker, completely irrational. The goblins depend on luck and fortune, and the Maestro, music. Again, music is not an entirely rational thing.
And you can see even with this most confident of doctors, this most sort of joyous of doctors, there have been key moments where he's just thought, I'm frightened and I don't know why, I can't deal with this, let's run and hide. And those are quite powerful moments. And I think that's the normal doctor reacting to the new Russell T Davies non-subtle approach, and how that ties in with the villains and the world. He's creating this new world, which the Doctor doesn't really work in at the moment, because the Doctor's not used to it, just as we're not used to it.
Him being scared of the size of this. I mean, when we had what were the other gods called that we used to have back in the day?
The Eternals,
the Eternals,
Ragnarok?
yeah. So the Eternals were massive. Ragnarok's massive. You can't really defeat these things. They're just always there. You have to kind of prison them or trick them and that sort of stuff. So the jinn and the genies,
a lot of the time.
Yeah, but that requires a clever denouement, a clever ending. You have to do something relatively clever with that. Even if you stick them in a time loop, you need to trick them into it, and it's about the right. This didn't feel like there was any subtlety anywhere.
But also we haven't had the ending yet. So this is this story of this pantheon of deities coming. This is obviously an ongoing story over this year or this 2 years.
So massively Disney. This feels. Yeah. Does anybody else feel like this is actually like a Disney episode? A couple of Disney episodes now. Even though I was trying not to think about it, I just think RTD is, maybe I'm wrong, RTD is licking the bum of Disney to say, look, we can do this, as opposed to Disney influencing and go, no, I think you should do it like this. I don't think that's the case. I think he's trying to make it feel like this would slot in Disney Plus easily.
I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think a lot of Disney stuff is worth doing, right?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. If you look at Star Wars and what they've done, practically all the series are brilliant, apart from say one or two, but they are.
But they've not Disneyed, have they?
No, they haven't. So why is this being more?
What is it?
Because Doctor Who doesn't have that defined shape that Star Wars does.
Doctor Who.
But also, I'm not quite sure what Disney means anymore. I mean, I know that
you probably don't watch much children's television.
There's a cartooniness to these episodes, but I think that's a conscious departure from Chibnall, and that's something that even we didn't get with Moffat. That's why The Devil's Chord felt quite fresh to me, because it is a new approach.
But there's also there is also, and Lee's not wrong about this, there's a certain tone to things like the High School Musicals, but more particularly the TV series, and I've seen bits and pieces of lots of them. So I've seen this tone in action, and there is a tone, and Russell T Davies they as a production have leaned into this tone a bit more than Doctor Who normally does. But I don't think that is or should be a problem in itself, because Doctor Who can lean in different directions.
Only when the breaks the fourth wall, which the Maestro did a few times, and then you're getting song and dance numbers and the Doctor. Yeah.
Could I give you? Well, I was just going to say, I'll give you another example of a little example of something that happened or didn't happen in the episodes that kind of shows how this is different from the way it went before. So the third episode, first time around, was The Unquiet Dead, right? in which Charles Dickens was a central character who was in the story all the way through. And by the end of the story, there is a solution, and Charles Dickens is inspired into that solution, one, by understanding the situation, two, by having spent time in the company of the Doctor and in the company of his intellect. And so some of that rubs off onto Charles Dickens, that he understands how to do this. And thirdly, by being in the company of the Doctor and understanding what courage really means too. So there are several ways in which Charles Dickens, a ubiquitous character in that episode, has learned to defeat the enemy in the end. In this episode, you get a 90-second conversation with John Lennon at the start. You don't see him again. And then right at the very end, he sits down and says, "Oh, I know what to do. Jingle, jangle, jingle." Problem solved.
It's Lennon and McCartney.
Yeah, by the end, it's Lennon,
and it's
who comes
not,
in first,
and that's
McCartney.
not really what happens, is it? That it's given a bit more import to that.
It kind of is. It's the Doctor comes up with most of that melody.
He just comes in, sees the melody floating in space, and says, "Oh, let's play that. Oh, brilliant, we've done it."
Yeah, but the Doctor didn't come up with the end of the melody. That's the key thing.
No, but the point is, none of that is set up. The character's not been told by the Doctor, and when I say told, I don't mean spoken to tell. I mean told in terms of having spent time with the character to learn and understand these things. The John Lennon we meet at the start of the episode is the one who won't go anywhere near playing good music because of the fear of what might happen if he does. And we don't see any journey that character goes on. And then at the end, he walks into the room, and instead of being afraid to play these notes, he just sits down and plays them for no other reason than that we're 42 minutes and we need to get through it.
I think what they present at the beginning is John Lennon being afraid to play music, but then there's a lot of stuff underneath that they're talking about, that there's music there trying to come out in both Lennon and McCartney. And then you don't see them, which is a good thing, because they're not Charles Dickens. These aren't characters that
they're also not very good Beatles,
but they don't.
I thought George Martin was quite good, actually.
Yes,
he was.
Then they come back at the end, and it's revealed that actually the music is there waiting to come out, and the right music is there waiting to come out.
Yeah, just very quickly, they played that song at the end, which is supposed to be a good song. The music's back. It was no better than the dog song at the beginning. What the heck was that about?
It was a little better. It wasn't the best music that's ever been written, though.
But the thing is, the celebrity historicals in the original Russell T Davies were about the individuals. This was not trying to be about the Beatles. I think the creative process was. Yeah,
but the example I'm giving is not that it's not about the Beatles, but that if you want the Beatles, therefore, to solve the problem, you have to at least give them a reason on screen that we as a viewer can understand.
Which they did. If you watch the cups of tea in the canteen and the reactions and the performances in there, there's a lot about how the music is inside them, waiting to come out. How they're actually like having to hold this stuff back.
But then you have to give them the reason to let it out.
You need another.
Give us a reason to let it out. He walks into an empty room and just starts playing it.
Let it be, mate. Let it be.
They're constipated. The Doctor gives them the laxative with those first few notes.
Effectively, yeah. I mean,
is it? Am I right in saying that last chord was the chord they used at the end of
Day in the Life?
Day in a Life.
Yes.
No. Which was
1963. They're going for that effect. That jing.
Right, so they must have created it then and then remembered it for 7 years, or whatever it was.
Oh no, it's not the same chord, Lee.
So this isn't entirely accurate to the history of the Beatles, but
why?
Also a black.
What about Charles Dickens?
You look just like Simon Callow. What are you talking about?
That was a funny thing as well, wasn't it? They've spent a lot of time, or it feels like they've spent a lot of time in the publicity explaining to everybody what the Devil's Chord is. Then when you get to the episode, this Devil's Chord is supposed to be this thing that's been lost that nobody knows about.
Yeah, I mean, they played the chord, which is always disappointing when you say it's an unplayable chord. Yeah. You know, it's a forgotten chord. Oh, you're never going to hear it. Oh, you can't. How are you going to figure out those notes? Well, there's only a certain amount of notes you can press on the keyboard anyway. So you're going to get it eventually, aren't you?
See, I'm wondering for the ongoing thing, you've got that. So the Giggle was what, 23, was it, or 22? I can't quite remember the original Logie Beer transmission. This was 1926. So was this something opened up? Are we going to see things sort of just coming in through history on that?
Maybe.
I think I read somewhere that somebody had said it was the same year, but I don't think it is. I think you're right. But it's the same decade for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. 1920s. Who knows? But I mean, it doesn't look like that's going to be anywhere else in the series. What did we think of the Pyramids of Mars moment? Because I'm never fond of when they get in the TARDIS and go somewhere else and then come back.
But even it's Pyramids of Mars if Sutekh had gone with them.
Yeah.
So
that
nice kind of twist.
I like that bit when suddenly the lights changed, and it's a bit that again is designed as an anti-Rawlings device because it's completely takes you out of drama. But if you like cling on for the ride, I think it works. It does feel like there are a few things that RTD had to cut out of his original run that he's sort of reintroduced, or even the alternate ending to his first. Is it the alternate ending to the first series of scanning the companion in the TARDIS?
That's Amy Pond as well, isn't it? Scanning the companion.
Oh yeah.
It's
what was the thing shot for the end of the first series?
Oh, the Cybermen.
They used it as a decoy instead of the Eccleston regeneration. It was like,
I don't recall.
Or maybe I am thinking Amy Pond. And
I can't remember. I think there was due to be a similar scene to this in Quiet Dead, off the top of my head.
Right. Okay.
But that was cut in quite an early draft, if I remember.
Oh no, it's the Doctor scanning Rose and discovering that Bad Wolf had like fundamentally changed the shape of her brain or something.
That was Paul Abbott's script.
Right.
That was
11. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
But then see that bit where they come forward into the future and see the world's been devastated, and then as soon as Maestro turns up, that world is gone anyway. It just felt like there was no substance to the idea that the world was devastated. If as soon as Jinx Monsoon turns up, it can just be a black backdrop and some curtains. It's like, well, does it really matter? Is that really true? Is that really how things are going to be if it can change that easily? It just everything felt as really insubstantial in both of these
episodes. Very
odd,
isn't it? And also when you've got something, you've got the Beatles. I don't know. Did he ask Paul McCartney permission to play one of their songs, or for him to make a cameo? Because imagine if he came up at the they go forward in time. They go forward in time. They go forward in time, and you've got this nuclear winter. Jinx is there like that, and then there's this puppeted human, and you look down and it's actually Paul McCartney. It's going, I don't like music or whatever. And
Paul McCartney as he is now, just like a bullet burn out shell. That would be brilliant.
He'd have probably loved it, wouldn't he?
But that moment in the future world, you found it insubstantial, but I found it disconcerting because again we're dealing with like gods, and not for the first time in Doctor Who, whatever RTD says, but it is an unusual amount of deity that we're getting in Doctor Who, and they are sort of playful. So that moment is,
but I don't find
it's a note of music as part of our humanity, isn't it? That's the effect.
I didn't find anything.
Go on.
Well, I was just going to say I didn't find it threatening or disconcerting or unnerving or anything like that. I just thought it was really dull.
I think for me, if they'd made Maestro a bit more threatening to start with, then that would have increased the weight of that scene.
What, not give them a terrible outfit, you mean?
But it's like if you're going to do...
And the fact that they confronted June Hudson with the outfit as well. That was quite a nice touch.
It's like if you're going to come up with characters or use characters that are supposed to be all-powerful and able to influence everything around you, then surely you want to see examples of that sort of being used in a multiple of different ways. You want to see... I mean, in The Giggle, it just kept coming back to Neil Patrick Harris doing a German accent. And you just kept thinking, no, there should be more to this character than this. And I really enjoyed that episode. But this is like that episode again, but with the enjoyment level turned right down. And Jinx Monsoon's character. Yeah, Jinx Monsoon's character is
nature.
Bizarre
force of nature. Yeah. Tobin's force justice, force of music.
But it just felt so one-dimensional.
It's interesting. How many millions of dollars or pounds did these episodes have? Do we know?
I think they're about £7 million each.
Right, so £7 million for that second one. Come on, Matt. I mean, The Caretaker looked better than this, and all of Sarah Jane Smith's looked better than this. It doesn't look like there was £7 million spent on that screen.
I agree.
That the award-winning producer of our acquaintance agrees.
Well, I think it does look more expensive than Sarah Jane and some of the early Doctor Who's. I don't think it
does. Where you show me, Matt, you point to the exact minute or two in that episode where you think the money's really well spent.
I honestly think most of the Future Earth effects. I thought that was good. The
you can do that
with the music wrapped in.
You can do that on AI,
music
CGI.
They did do it with CGI.
There are some really nice special effects, but I think the trouble is there's this real disjunct between a really nice special effect that's on screen for 10 seconds and then 10 minutes just spent in a room.
So I don't think it looks particularly more expensive than a lot of the Chibnall episodes. I would say that, but they had a lot more. They were a lot more expansive, and they travelled to places. This feels like it's made in a base studio, and he doesn't want to leave Cardiff at all.
Well, and why did you want to leave Cardiff?
Well, yeah.
That's kind of JR's point though as well. That I'm agreeing with you a lot, aren't I? That it's very, very insular. That music is not just about the Beatles and Britain and whatever. It's a global thing, and we're supposed to have lost our humanity and killed each other because there's not enough empathy in the world because of music and all that. It would only take a couple of £100,000, whatever, just to show music around the world, different cultures, all that sort of thing, just failing. Not much, but just something to show the size and the scale. They're gods, so the scale should be bigger, whereas we've got this very tiny, and we had that with the Celestial Toymaker. It's very much like it's in a toy shop. It's that, we've got Britain sorted out with the TV,
like
but
the
what about the
Doomsday, world? And not Doomsday, Army of Ghosts, where they have that around the world thing.
Yeah, you can do that in a short story. You can write almost, you're not supposed to, but you can write different parts of the world in a short story, and it feels global. James Bond does it very easily. I know it's a bigger thing, but it doesn't take that much to show the world as being affected. I think they did it with the Daleks and things in German and stuff. That was quite good.
In this case, there's two things that happen. There's Maestro takes away music from the world, but you don't know that when she does it in 1925. And then there's the gag that they turned up for the Beatles' first recording, and they're singing about their dog, which I think was a bit unfair to Cat Stevens because he did, But they're singing this kind of trite song about a dog that they're just trying to get out of the way. And there's that gag that wouldn't work if we saw the scale of what Maestro had done back in 1925.
No, but then you can see it in the scene where you go into the future. You can have a sequence where you see, well, that's what's changed, but this is how and why it's changed.
Could have been America. It could have been South Africa. It doesn't matter where it is. It's just you just need to show that it's a global issue.
You get really Khrushchev invades Finland or whatever, so you get nods towards that.
Yeah, that's true. Nods.
What happened to Elvis Presley though? Or Little Richard, like the guys in the 50s.
Yeah, right. You see, there's loads that could have been done.
But I don't think this was. So this is my defense. This is why I was relieved, because this wasn't about the Beatles' music. This wasn't about the Beatles. I think it very successfully made the case that this is about music in general. And this is, I felt like this was a global thing, even though we didn't have to see it. We were sort of, it was hinted at throughout, and we were shown it through what happens with the Beatles.
I also don't think taking music away from the world would end us as a species.
Although there's also that Jinx, it does play his character as American, so it can be about American culture squashing ours in a lot of ways, and the Beatles therefore being a breakthrough.
Well, then also this takes you back to Space Babies as well, which obviously has a theme of Roe versus Wade. So how do we feel about, and that was really, really on the nose, wasn't it?
I don't know what you mean.
So there was that abortion line in it, basically.
About who? Is
so
it
the babies are forced to be kept alive.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
And the on the nose bit was, well, there's something about, well, that's unusual. Oh no, it isn't. Looking at whatever certain states of America.
You know that in America
consequences too.
Yeah. And so the whole thing is basically about unwanted babies being shuffled off into outer space and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, there's lots of lines about it. What I was going to ask is, I mean, for myself, I think there's a place for that in Doctor Who. And I don't mind the idea that it's so straightforward. To me, it was the episode itself that failed. And the actual idea behind the episode was terrific. So I just want to know around the table, I guess, politics in Doctor Who, especially politics that pointed, that current, and that on the nose. Is that okay? Is that something we like in our Doctor Who?
Yeah, part of Russell T Davies's way, right? You know, weapons of massive destruction for a start.
He hardly did it first time, did he?
Really?
I actually prefer the way Chibnall did it because it didn't feel like it was. It felt like, I mean, Chibnall did it very bluntly and with a lot of exposition, which I didn't think was very successful. But it didn't feel like it was Chibnall's personal kind of preoccupations at the time coming through. It was just general sort of be nice to people politics coming through. Yeah. This feels like there are sort of pointed lines that I feel like Russell T Davies says this thing about the delivery of Bethlehem. People wanted to go back to Bethlehem, and there's bits about religion, bits about abortion, bits about refugees, which are all, 99% of them, I think, are honourable and good messages to get across. But you can sort of feel Russell T Davies. It feels like it's got Russell T Davies's anger behind it rather than Chris Chibnall's sort of humanity behind it.
Yeah. Kind of it's powered Russell T Davies's writing more in recent years. Years and Years, It's a Sin in particular. So he's a much angrier writer under the surface. You've just got Doctor Who has a lot frothier surface to it.
Going back to what you were saying, John, that weapons of mass destruction is about the only thing in the first 5 years of Russell T Davies, isn't it? There's not a great deal outside of that of current politics. I don't think.
Apart from the unfortunate accidental anti-immigrant subtext to the Dickens episode.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? If you're going to throw politics in, it's going to be outdated anyway pretty quickly. So the politics has to be something that's going to live in the future. You will look back and go, "Oh yeah, I remember that," or I can still relate to that, or whatever. But actually,
I don't mind that because you can watch a film about Malcolm X or whatever. But
RTD doesn't care, does he? He's always said, I write stuff at the time. It's going to get dated. I'm fine with that. So it is what it is.
Yeah, you got Green Death, Invasion of Dinosaurs. They have dated as pieces of television, but the concerns they come round again. So I think part of Russell T's metaphor, they will come back again.
Although I personally think Invasion of the Dinosaurs doesn't bear thinking about anymore. It's pointless to even go back to it.
Because someone has written the definitive work on it, same as the Demons.
Whereas something about the occult in a small village, I think that's eternally revisitable.
Unbelievable.
I think my worry is, though...
I gave you a review,
When?
Did you?
Oh, was it that 1-star one that came out?
Yes.
Yeah, that was great.
That was you, was it?
Yeah,
I haven't read it.
All I said was it
turned
turned
up every week on the podcast. My worry is it'll do a Michael Clayton. That's the example I always give. Michael Clayton's this film with its heart very much in its right place, but it was so on the nose that if you were going along with the message, you didn't need to be told a bunch of stuff you already knew. And if you weren't on board with the message, then it was probably putting you off and you weren't going to go and watch it anyway. And I guess my worry would be if this Doctor Who is like this every week, then people are going to stop watching it who need to be told this stuff. And people who don't need to be told this stuff might end up getting a little bit nauseous from having so much of it all the time.
Good point.
I was just going to say, I don't think it does look like it's going to be as on the nose in a sort of ongoing sense. It looks like it might settle down on that front now, with the odd exception. There's an episode coming up that is also going to be very on the nose. I shan't say any more than that for Lee's benefit. But there are other episodes coming up that don't look like they're going to be as much on the nose. I guess we'll see when we get there. I just hope it doesn't become so one note about it that it's sort of, because it would be like having the same thing for lunch every day for a year, wouldn't it? Nobody wants that.
It won't be that trifle I like to talk about quite a lot on these podcasts. I like a good trifle. So many layers.
Lee's back. Is it a trifle? Are there layers?
It is a trifle, but it's made with all the wrong ingredients. It just doesn't sit together well as a mouthful.
Was it made of bogies? Oh.
Great. Even that bit where she gets sneezed on is just like the bit where he gets sneezed on in Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, right?
See, my initial thought was it was going to be all made out of the nappy. What was that?
Oh yeah.
Well, so you could have said it's a load of old shit. Then I'd have great line ready.
There were some funny moments. A very RTD clever comedy where they cut from the lady about to swear, and then Nanny, does something else with the words, and that was funny. That actually made me chuckle, and I thought
I like the baby boom line, because that was a very dark line from a quite light Doctor.
That first scene though, I mean, were you not weirded out by the whole thing? Because I mean, maybe you knew about it. I didn't know what was coming, for God's sake. So when they opened the doors and all these babies in jars, I was like, what the hell's this about? This
more
really
grandchildren,
horrible.
You thought? Oh my God.
This looks terrible. It's like Trump's backyard. But it was like I just thought, why isn't the companion more shocked? Why isn't she like going, what the heck? It's just kind of like, oh yeah, that babies. Oh, talking babies. Oh, okay, get past that, talking babies. But I don't know. She never convinced me with those. But it's
goes back to what I was saying about it not being a real
weird.
person.
It's proper weird. But the Tennant weird episode, where's him and Catherine Tate on the spaceship, was weird but worked. This was weird and just didn't really work for me. But he was talking crappy CGI and 12-year-olds voicing them, as opposed to maybe heightening them up a little bit and making them squeaky. I'd have preferred that, personally.
They're supposed to be about 5, weren't they? I think that's what they said in the dialogue, that they're 5 years old, but they've not aged.
The size of them, their larynxes aren't big enough to sound like that. Just saying.
Lee, you're going to bring physics into this.
Lee,
don't talk about Kill the Moon.
Talking of funny moments, on Twitter, everybody's been raving about this bit, and I thought it felt really flat. But I don't know, Lee, you've got comedy bones. The funniest moment in the entire 2 episodes, apparently, was the bit where Ncuti Gatwa says, "Oh, I thought that was non-diegetic."
It's clever.
Is it? It's not clever.
It's clever-ish if you know what music is and la la la, but it wasn't funny.
I didn't think it was funny or clever. I didn't think it was funny or clever, or indeed, I didn't think it fit in the story.
No, I know, but what it would do, it would make people just go, "Oh, what does that mean?" and they go look it up. So you're learning something. That's your educational box tick for Doctor Who, isn't it?
But again, we're getting a lot of breaking the fourth wall in each story now.
Yeah.
So, well, and again, it was Russell T Davies stealing a moment from the 5-ish Doctors reboot, wasn't it?
Yeah, totally. But why not?
Because it doesn't fit.
I'm wondering whether the fourth wall thing is going to happen a lot, and that is to do with, the gods of Ragnarok watching all of this and being entertained.
Yeah.
It is a bit weird, actually. I don't mind the fourth wall breaking, but you kind of, when he just sort of says, "Oh, let's go and do a thing," and then just turns to the camera and winks, that was odd.
There's always a twist at the end.
Yeah, and he did it like maybe 3 times, at least twice, maybe 3 times. I just couldn't work out. I don't mind it when it happens, but I like to think that these things happen for a reason. If Matt's right, and so actually I saw somebody suggest somewhere that, oh, are we actually watching a television program that somebody in the fiction has made of Doctor Who? And is that why these things are happening? I suspect these things are happening because it's Russell T Davies. And Russell T Davies
we had things like
doesn't
Snow.
put reasons in.
We had Snow turn up for no reason. But
that was okay because
we
there
had
was
Jinx
a
turn around and literally wink, and almost like a bing moment where she was, and that was directly at the camera. It does feel like there's some Land of Fiction stuff coming in here. I don't know, but I don't know what's happening in the future. You probably all know what the ending is. I don't.
No, I don't.
Yeah. No, we don't know what the ending is. I'm just thinking though, the characters in those situations, so like the bit at the start of Under the Lake, where Peter Capaldi is playing the guitar. Actually, the way it goes into the music at the start of Devil's Chord, the opening titles, and the way it comes back out, I thought the way it came back out was really good. The way it went in just felt really weird to me. It was like
jammed together. It
just
natural,
faded. One faded out, and the other one faded in, rather than melding the two together.
It was like that bit at the end of Five Doctors where they just went, right, we're just going to chuck them together, and it's like one of those cars just
didn't work
back
at
into
all.
the front end.
And
somebody had a nice idea, but nobody was able to execute it.
I mean, Millie was actually listening to the theme to Doctor Who in the jukebox. That's what we got at the end. That it was the theme to the show they are in. So this is again just points me in the realm of this is all made up almost.
I think there's probably a common sense sort of. Some of it is just playfulness and will be glossed over. Some of it might mean something. I think obviously there are going to be more gods in this. There's more magical realism in this because that's the direction RTD is going, and the slight fourth wall breaks here and there. I don't think they're going to turn out to be major plot beats, but they are sort of nods towards this new tone that he's adopting, this more playful tone. And then you either go with it, or you worry about when the Beatles came up with the chord for a day in the life, and you worry about this, that, and the other, or whether the size of babies' larynxes, you start getting concerned about that. I think there are some things, as with Doctor Who, always things you just have to accept and things you have to
Sorry, hang on. It's just breaking up a bit.
But I like to think that the people making the program are on top of what they're making, and everything makes sense within the fiction. So the fourth wall breaking, it's something like the fourth wall breaking. The idea that the characters in the fiction are looking into a camera, I think that's fine as long as it makes sense within the scene. So when Peter Capaldi's doing the bit at the start of Under the Lake, is it Under the Lake? It's Before the Flood. Before the Flood. Right. At the start of Before the Flood, when he's doing that, he's not looking into a camera. He's talking to himself, and the camera becomes the self that he's talking to. Something like Ncuti Gatwa or Maestro just turning to the camera and winking. That is there is somebody there with the camera moment. So it's not the fourth wall breaking, but it's the making it make sense. And if it does become just this is a tonal thing we're doing, go with it. I'm afraid to say, I don't think you can just do tonal things and say go with it. I think you have to give us a reason to go with it. I think
you do. I think the tonal thing. I think the lack of reason is actually part of the tonal thing, because we're dealing with a more chaotic experience.
If Buffy or Star Trek or any other series that's been going, that went for a long time, ran around for a long time, if they turn around and look at the camera, there's a reason for it. They're inflected, or that the whole of the episode is kind of meta for a reason. It's being very clever for a reason. These, like you say, Jay, are just almost like throwaway moments that either RTD has to explain later, or is running with an idea that he's just going to you put here, and it's kind of, I'll explain that later. That'll be fun. Or it's just throwaway. It doesn't. It's weird.
I think there's room for it. I think there's room to throw away.
Happy Christmas, everybody.
Well, yeah, or Tom Baker looking directly into the camera.
He didn't, though, did he?
Yeah, he did.
If you look at his eyes,
if you look at it carefully, they're looking off to the side, man.
Yeah.
So, what you're saying is this entire series is just an attempt to explain the end of the Feast of Stephen.
I think my point is there's a place. So watching something like this is an emotional experience, and if your emotional experience interferes with your intellectual experience, and you start saying, "Why did he do that? What's the point of that?" Then sometimes you have to suspend that, and you embrace the emotional sort of, "That was weird."
No, I think they've got to give you a reason to suspend it.
I don't think it's up to me to think that.
Anita Dobson looks straight down the lens at the end of the giggle.
Again.
Church on Ruby Road.
Yeah. That's a sort of
No, that's different from winking into a camera, because if I'm talking to you now, I might look off to the side like this, as in the middle of talking, and in the directorial terms, there might be a camera there, but I'm not looking off because there's a camera there. I'm looking off because I'm thinking about something, and then I want to come back to your face. If you're winking, I mean, there is no reason whatsoever why I would go, in the middle of our conversation, is there? If you want to put things like that in, you have to give me a reason to go with them. They can't just be there.
Yeah, and I don't think it's up to us as viewers
you do have to give a reason.
make that decision of like, I've got to think about this. Is it going to affect my enjoyment? That's up to the people writing the actual episodes and presenting it to me to make sure that they get it right, so I don't have to question it.
I think sometimes you just have to go with it. I mean, just
watch
more musicals.
But then, if you're going to go with it, then the whole tone of the whole thing has to be consistent. You're saying watch more musicals. Okay, then you watch a musical, and that musical is a musical from the moment you start watching it to the moment it finishes. It doesn't turn into a musical after 20 minutes and then stop being a musical after 21.
But, not to labour the point, but an individual musical does have different tones throughout. If you watch something like American in Paris, the musical sequences vary in tone throughout and become more and more abstract.
They vary in tone, but it doesn't stop being a musical halfway through.
Okay.
Well, the Goblin song, again, is another one of those oddities that in Doctor Who that we've never had before. But there was a reason for him singing that. He was singing it as a distraction. Now, that's why I thought, this is really clever. But when you're going to
have been singing it in a goblin voice, though, right?
But actually, I didn't see the very, very last minute of Doctor Who in the second episode. I turned off because it was hurting too much to watch when they were dancing around on the tables singing, and I thought that I just can't do this.
That song got really good just after that, Luke.
Actually, the song was so poor as well. That was also annoying. I just thought I could put it into AI and create something better than that.
I think what you're saying is you found your limit with the fourth wall breaking during this episode.
No, it's the song.
What I'm saying is I don't think Russell T Davies is interested in people's limits. He's presenting a text that kind of says Doctor Who is now going to become tonally chaotic. It's dealing with deities now. It's looser, and whether or not it's reached and passed your limits is sort of immaterial. I mean, it's a legitimate criticism of it.
Well, it is when we give it a score.
If they're dancing around if they're dancing and singing the song in different, that ending, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. It doesn't make sense then doing a High School Musical moment for I don't know who was watching that. What was the point of that? Why, do you do that, Matt? Do you go into your refectory area in the university campus, start dancing, and then come on, let's all do it because we love music so much?
I think
don't do you?
It's right indoors.
Doesn't make any sense.
I think
1963.
To a certain extent, though, Russell T Davies' Doctor has always been about that Saturday night thing, and you have a couple of Strictly people in there as well. So essentially, he's bringing Strictly Come Dancing into Doctor Who.
Yeah, well, bring it into Doctor Who properly and make it a curse or a disease or a red shoes.
Well, Devil's Chord, a song about music, leads right into the original song contest. So
yeah, it does. That's true, actually. That's why, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some good bits.
Okay, have we got more, or do we want to score things?
Let's score it.
Let's do a score.
Okay. Right. Okay, Matt, I'll start with you. Space Babies.
Space Babies. It will be a 5 or 6, a 6, I think. But I think the babies were my problem with the Space Babies. I think that was the effect that kind of pulled me out of it.
Okay, I'll go next and get this out of the way. 3. I literally was sitting in the middle of that, thinking it was the worst episode of Doctor Who I'd ever seen, and it didn't really get any better. Lee?
I thought it was the worst episode of Doctor Who. So, and then the second one turned up. So 3.
This is the effect of showing Doctor Who at midnight, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
To old men.
John, Space Babies.
Yeah, I think I'll go with 6 because it did effectively introduce Shooty Gatwa's Doctor for me. And it did, I know, a huge amount of exposition, which frankly, let's face it, none of us 4 need anyway. But so it wasn't for me. But I think a 6 is fine. I didn't absolutely hate it like Lee and JR did, but I didn't particularly love it.
Fair enough. I'll stay with you then, John, and go backwards around for the Devil's Chord.
I think I'd go with an 8. It was messy, but I liked Jinx Monsoon. I liked the ideas, the physical representation of music, And yeah, I like Doctor Who going nuts and essentially being a better parent and doing the musical numbers. And so yeah, 8 from me.
And you, Lee?
A point for Shooty and a point for Jinx.
So 2.
Deux points. It's I hate it. And I also don't like the first episode. I'm going to be absolutely honest. Last night when I finished, I thought I'm never watching Doctor Who again. It literally put me off so much that I thought, that's it. I'm over it. I'm a fan gone. I'm an old man that's obviously not designed to be watching this. It's for somebody else. I was so upset that I just had to go out and drive on Dartmoor to see the Aurora Borealis to cheer me up. But this morning, and talking to you guys and thinking about it a little bit more, has given me a thought that I might watch it again, but the chances are I probably never will. I've watched Jodie stuff twice, and some of that I always said that I would never watch again, and I have, and I won't ever watch the Sea Devils one with her in it again. And that's how I feel about these two. It just doesn't. It doesn't connect with me at all.
Stephen Moffat next week, though. So
hopefully it'll be better next week.
Stephen Moffat has got to be.
Better be.
I'm gonna be very generous and give it a 6. I was 5 or a 6. I think there's some great ideas and some great moments, but I just didn't think it hung together at all. And there was too much about it. It was just boring, I think. But anyway, Matt, The Devil's Chord.
I think I'm going with an 8. Because I just think I was so worried it was going to be Yesterday, and I was so worried it was going to be Predictable or Faust, because that's just so grindingly predictable, and it did things that surprised me. Like, the whole thing, it was about music, and it was sort of playful and chaotic. I really liked Jinx Monsoon, and I was worried that I'd find them sort of overwhelming, and I did find them overwhelming, but it worked for me.
Fair enough.
So if you like music, then you'd obviously like this. If you're
I don't know, because there wasn't an awful lot of music in it.
Cynical and late middle-aged, then obviously.
If you haven't had your soul sucked out like a nuclear winter.
Do you know, that's quite interesting? You mentioned you said the word Faust there, because I had a story in the offing for one of our short story books that we often write for, and it was to do with Paganini. Because obviously Paganini, the violinist, everybody thought he was possessed by the devil. He could play with two strings. He would start to get very ill, and his face was sucking in, all this sort of thing. And Goethe was around about that time, wasn't he? And we wonder whether or not, I don't think it's proven, but whether or not Paganini might have been an inspiration for Faust, that he's selling his devil. And the whole thing was about him actually meeting the devil and selling his soul, but obviously it wasn't, as an alien, and it was going to be a short story. But when this came up, The Devil's Chord, I thought, oh, holy moly, they've nicked my idea again. But actually, no, luckily it was, I think I'm still free to write that because this was pants.
And also, on Matt's point of, if you like music, you'll like The Devil's Chord. There are 2 people on this call who've been on stage to playing music in front of paying customers, and neither of us did.
That's why I'm so surprised. I'm surprised and disappointed in the musicians around the table.
If you want a bit of positivity from the Rawlings side, my son absolutely loved it. So there we go.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good news.
And my son was so scarred by the church on Ruby Road that even though he's so excited to get back into John Pertwee, he so far refuses to go anywhere near any more Shooty Gatler.
Oh dear.
We will watch it. We'll be back next week to talk about Boom. Until then, I was JR.
I was John.
I was Lee.
And I was Matt.
And we will speak again soon.